My name is Emma, and I am 34 years old. For as long as I can remember, I believed in hard work, independence, and never relying on anyone else for my success. I built my career from the ground up, working tirelessly as a real estate investor in Brookdale. After years of determination, I finally achieved something remarkable. I owned an $8 million luxury apartment complex. It was more than just property to me. It was the result of my sacrifices, my smart decisions, and my endless hours of work. Success had never been handed to me. I wasn't born into wealth. My parents were simple people. My father was a retired firefighter, and my mother ran a small bookstore. They taught me the value of discipline and integrity, and I carried those lessons with me through life. Despite everything I had accomplished, there was one thing I had always dreamed of: a family of my own. That's when I met Ryan Carter. Ryan was 37 years old and worked as a cybersecurity specialist. We met at a networking event, and from the moment he walked into the room, he had a certain charm about him. He was witty, intelligent, and seemed genuinely interested in my dreams and ambitions. At first, everything was perfect. He listened when I talked about my work. He supported my goals, and most importantly, he made me feel loved and understood. After a year of dating, Ryan proposed during a weekend getaway. It felt like a fairy tale, the man I loved kneeling before me, promising a future filled with happiness. Our wedding was a grand celebration, filled with laughter, love, and promises of forever. I truly believed that I had found my perfect partner. But I had no idea that the man I married was not the man I thought he was. The first few months of marriage felt like a dream. Ryan and I moved into the penthouse of my apartment complex, excited to start our life together. Everything felt perfect, or at least I tried to believe it was. At first, Ryan was the same man I fell in love with: attentive, kind, and supportive. He would talk about our future, about traveling the world together and building a life that was truly ours. But as time passed, something began to shift. Ryan started acting distant. He was always on his phone, barely paying attention to me when we were together. Conversations that once flowed effortlessly now felt forced. When I asked if something was wrong, he would brush me off. "Work has been stressful," he would say. "It's nothing, Emma. You worry too much." I tried to believe him, but then small things started to add up. He stopped asking about my business, something he once took great interest in. He began criticizing my long hours, saying I should focus more on our marriage than my career. And then his mother, Linda Carter, started showing up. At first, it was just occasional visits, an unannounced drop-in for coffee or a surprise dinner at our place. I tried to welcome her, even when she made passive-aggressive comments about my work. "It must be so exhausting for Ryan to be married to such a busy woman," she said once, her smile thin and forced. I let it slide. After all, I was trying to build a relationship with my mother-in-law. But I had no idea that her presence was only the beginning of my nightmare. At first, Linda's visits were just an inconvenience. She would show up unannounced, make little comments about my lifestyle, and slyly criticize everything I did. "You work too much, Emma," she would say, shaking her head. "A wife should prioritize her home and husband first." I bit my tongue every time, wanting to keep the peace. After all, she was Ryan's mother, and I didn't want to create tension in my marriage. But over time, her presence became unbearable. She started showing up more and more often, staying longer each time. I would come home from work and find her sitting in my living room, sipping tea like she lived there. One evening, I walked into the kitchen and saw her rearranging my cabinets. I frowned. "Linda, what are you doing?" She didn't even look at me. "Organizing." "You had everything in the wrong place." The wrong place? It was my home, and yet she acted like she had the authority to make changes without even asking. I brought it up to Ryan that night, expecting him to set some boundaries. "Ryan, your mom is here almost every day now. I think we need to talk to her about giving us space." He sighed, looking at me like I was the problem. Emma, she's just trying to help. She means well. I felt a wave of disappointment crash over me. Why was he defending her instead of listening to me? I told myself it would get better, that it was just a phase. But I was so wrong. The very next week, Linda moved in. The night Linda announced she was moving in is burned into my memory. I had just come home from work, exhausted and looking forward to a quiet evening. But as I stepped into the penthouse, I saw suitcases lined up near the door. My stomach dropped. Linda stood in the living room, a satisfied smile on her face. "Linda, what's going on?" I asked, my voice slow and careful. She tilted her head, acting like it was the most normal thing in the world. "I've decided to move in. It's better this way. A family should be together." I blinked, trying to process what I had just heard. Moving in, without even discussing it with me? I turned to Ryan, who sat on the couch, looking tense but not surprised. "Ryan, tell me she's joking." He sighed. "Emma, Mom's getting older. She doesn't need to live alone anymore. This is what families do. They take care of each other." "Take care of each other?" "Ryan, this is my home. Don't I get a say in who lives here?" I demanded, my heart pounding. Linda let out a dramatic sigh. "Emma, don't be selfish. Ryan and I have already talked about this. It's happening." I turned back to Ryan, my pulse racing. "You talked about this without me?" He avoided my gaze. "I knew you'd overreact." Overreact? My own husband had made a life-changing decision behind my back, and I was the one overreacting. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay calm. This wasn't just about an annoying mother-in-law anymore. This was about control. Linda was taking over my home, and Ryan was letting her. That night, as I lay in bed, my back turned to my husband, I couldn't shake the feeling that my life was no longer my own. But what I didn't know yet was that this was only the beginning of the nightmare. Days turned into weeks, and Linda made herself at home, at my expense. She took over the kitchen, rearranging everything and throwing away things she didn't like. She gave orders to the cleaning staff, telling them how to do their jobs as if she owned the place. She even started redecorating, replacing my decor with things she preferred. I felt like I was a guest in my own home. But the worst part? Ryan didn't care. Whenever I brought it up, he would say the same thing. "Emma, stop making a big deal out of everything. She's my mother. She's not going anywhere." I started to feel trapped. Then everything changed. One morning, I woke up feeling exhausted. My body was sore, I felt nauseous, and no amount of sleep seemed to help. At first, I thought it was stress. Linda was suffocating me, and Ryan was ignoring me. Of course, I was exhausted, but then I realized I was late. My heart pounded as I stared at the calendar. I hadn't had my period in over a month. A deep part of me already knew the answer, but I needed to be sure. I drove to the nearest pharmacy, bought a pregnancy test, and took it the second I got home. I stared at the stick, watching as the second pink line appeared. I was pregnant. A rush of emotions hit me at once: joy, fear, shock, and uncertainty. This was what I had always wanted, to start a family. But was this the life I wanted my baby to be born into? I took a deep breath, placing a hand over my stomach. No matter what, I would protect this baby. But first, I had to tell Ryan. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the pregnancy test in my hands, my heart pounding. I had always imagined this moment, telling my husband that we were going to have a baby. I pictured happiness, excitement, a tight hug filled with love. But as I looked toward the bedroom door, I felt nothing but uncertainty. Ryan had already changed. Would this make him better or worse? I took a deep breath, gathering my courage, and walked into the living room where Ryan and Linda were sitting together. Linda was sipping tea as if she ruled this house. Ryan looked up at me, bored. "What is it?" I swallowed hard, choosing to ignore Linda's presence. I need to talk to you alone. Linda scoffed. Whatever you have to say, you can say it in front of me. We don't keep secrets in this family. I clenched my jaw. No, you don't keep secrets, you control everything. Ryan sighed, rubbing his temples. Just say it, Emma. I hesitated for only a moment before finally speaking the words that would change everything. I'm pregnant. Silence. I watched Ryan's expression carefully, waiting for happiness, for excitement, for anything. But all I got was a blank stare. Linda was the first to react. She set her cup down with a loud clink and leaned forward. Well, she said, her voice cold and sharp, you need to start eating better. We don't want any complications. I blinked. That was it? No congratulations? No happiness? I turned back to Ryan. Did you hear what I said? He exhaled slowly. Yeah, I heard you. He shrugged. I guess this was bound to happen sooner or later. My heart dropped. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. This was the man I married. This was the father of my child, and he couldn't even pretend to be happy. Linda smirked, placing a hand on Ryan's knee. Don't worry, dear. I'll handle everything. A chill ran down my spine. Handle everything? For the first time since our wedding, I felt true fear. I walked back to the bedroom, my hands shaking. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. This was supposed to be a joyful moment. Instead, I felt like I had just made things worse. Ryan's reaction had been cold, distant, and indifferent. Linda, she looked like she was already planning something. The next few weeks only proved my fears were right. The moment Linda found out I was pregnant, she acted as if she was in charge of my body. She started making uninvited doctor's appointments without telling me. She criticized everything I ate. Too much sugar isn't good for the baby, Emma. She even tried to pick out baby names. I think we should name the baby after Ryan's grandfather. It's a strong name. I gritted my teeth. Linda. This is my baby. She simply smiled, as if I was too stupid to understand. Ryan, of course, said nothing. When I finally tried to set boundaries, telling Ryan that his mother was overstepping, he rolled his eyes. Emma, she's just excited. Stop making problems where there aren't any. I felt suffocated. This wasn't a family. This was a dictatorship. But I had no idea what was coming next. Because Linda and Ryan weren't just trying to control my pregnancy, they were trying to take away everything I owned. I woke up one morning, feeling exhausted. Pregnancy had already been draining, but dealing with Linda and Ryan made it unbearable. I was starting to see the truth. This wasn't just about control. Linda wasn't just overstepping. She was planning something. And then it happened. That evening, I walked into the living room and found Ryan and Linda sitting together, serious expressions on their faces. On the table in front of them was a thick stack of legal documents. A familiar sinking feeling settled in my stomach. Emma, sit down, Ryan said, his voice calm, too calm. I didn't move. What's this? Linda folded her hands together. It's time we talk about doing what's best for this family. She slid the papers toward me. I picked them up, my heart hammering, and then I saw it. Ownership transfer documents. If I signed them, Ryan would have full control over my $18 million apartment complex. I looked up at them, feeling the betrayal sink in like a knife to my chest. Are you serious? My voice shook. Ryan exhaled. Emma, this is the right thing to do. We're married. We should share everything. I laughed bitterly. By share, you mean take? Linda's expression didn't change. A wife's wealth belongs to her husband. This is how families work. I pushed the papers back. I'm not signing a damn thing. Linda's eyes darkened. Then, out of nowhere, she slapped me. A sharp stinging pain spread across my face as my head snapped to the side. I gasped, my hand instinctively going to my cheek. I was pregnant, and she had just hit me. Tears stung my eyes, not just from the pain but from the realization that I had married into a family that would do anything to break me. I turned to Ryan, begging him with my eyes to say something, to defend me. But he just sat there, silent, unmoved. And that's when I knew I had lost my husband. But I wasn't about to lose myself. I stood there, my cheek burning from Linda's slap, my hands shaking. But nothing, not the pain, not the shock, hurt as much as the way Ryan just sat there. I turned to him, my voice barely above a whisper. "You just let her hit me." He sighed, as if I was the one being unreasonable. "Emma, don't be dramatic." Dramatic? I was pregnant, his mother had just slapped me, and he thought I was overreacting. Linda, meanwhile, looked completely unfazed. She sat back, crossing her arms. "If you don't sign those papers, Emma, things will get much worse for you." A cold chill ran through me. This wasn't just manipulation anymore, this was a threat. I could have crumbled right there. I could have cried, screamed, begged Ryan to stand up for me. But instead, something inside me snapped. I stood up straight, squared my shoulders, and glared directly at Linda. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." Then I turned to Ryan. "And you're worse than her. You're a coward." For the first time, his face twisted with anger. "Watch how you talk to me, Emma." I smirked, wiping a tear from my cheek. "I won't have to talk to you much longer." With that, I turned and walked out of the room. If they thought I was going to just leave everything behind, they were dead wrong. I was done playing nice. Now, I was going to destroy them. I locked the bedroom door behind me, my hands shaking with rage. I pressed a hand over my stomach, my baby's heartbeat the only thing grounding me in that moment. I had to protect my child. Ryan and Linda thought they could intimidate me, control me, and take away everything I built. They thought I would break. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I grabbed my phone and called the one person I knew I could trust, Hannah Reed, my best friend and one of the best lawyers in Brookdale. She picked up on the first ring. "Emma, what's wrong?" I swallowed hard. "I need your help. Ryan and Linda just tried to force me to sign over my apartment complex. When I refused, she hit me." Hannah went silent for a moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was icy cold. "Pack a bag and get out of there now." "I can't just leave, Hannah. I own this place." "Emma, they're dangerous. You're pregnant. You need to be somewhere safe while we handle this legally." I clenched my jaw. She was right. I wasn't going to walk away from my home, but I had to be smart about this. I pulled out a small suitcase, stuffing it with essentials, clothes, documents, my laptop, everything I needed to be ready for the battle ahead. Then, before I left, I did something that would seal their fate. I logged into my building's security system and downloaded the footage from earlier that evening. The video was clear as day, Linda slapping me, Ryan pressuring me to sign away my property, their manipulation and threats. This was all the proof I needed. With the evidence saved, I grabbed my keys and walked out. As I passed the living room, Ryan called after me. "Where do you think you're going?" I turned to face him, my voice steady. "To make sure you never get a single cent from me." Then, I walked out without looking back. I drove straight to Hannah's office, my pulse racing the entire way. Every kick of my baby inside me reminded me why I had to do this. When I arrived, Hannah was already waiting, a legal file open on her desk. She took one look at my face, the fading red mark from Linda's slap, the exhaustion in my eyes, and her jaw clenched. "We're taking them down." I sank into the chair across from her, my hands trembling. "I want everything: divorce, a restraining order, and I want Linda charged for assault. Hannah nodded. Good. We have the evidence, the security footage. It's enough to destroy them in court. She began listing the legal actions we would take: filing for divorce immediately, separating myself from Ryan and ensuring he had no claim to my assets, a restraining order keeping Ryan and Linda far away from me and my baby, filing assault charges against Linda for hitting a pregnant woman, and exposing their attempted fraud. Their plan to steal my $18 million property would be used against them in court. Hannah leaned forward. Ryan is going to fight back. Are you ready for that? I met her gaze, my voice steady. Let him try. A week later, Ryan and Linda were officially served with legal papers. Ryan called me over and over, leaving voicemails full of empty apologies and fake concern. Emma, let's talk about this. You're acting crazy, baby. Don't do this. Think about our family. I deleted every single one. Then came Linda's messages. You ungrateful little brat. No man will ever want you after this. You'll regret this when you're alone with a crying baby and no one to help you. I smirked as I blocked her number. They were losing control, and they knew it. When I walked into the Brookdale Civil Court, I wasn't alone. Hannah stood beside me, her presence strong and unshakable. My parents were in the back row, their support a silent force of love. And inside me, my baby, the reason I was fighting. Ryan and Linda sat across from me. Ryan looked stiff, his jaw clenched. Linda was smug. The judge called the case forward, and the battle began. Hannah stood first. Your Honor, my client, Emma Lane, is here today because she has been subjected to financial coercion, physical assault, and an attempt to fraudulently seize her property. We have clear video evidence proving all of this. The courtroom fell silent as the security footage was played, Linda slapping me in my own home, Ryan pressuring me to sign my assets away, their attempts to intimidate and control me. I didn't look at them. I didn't need to. I had already won. The judge turned to Ryan's lawyer. How do you defend this? His lawyer hesitated before mumbling something about family misunderstandings. The judge wasn't impressed. She leaned forward, her voice firm. This is not a misunderstanding. This is coercion, fraud, and domestic violence, and it will not be tolerated. Ryan's confidence shattered. Linda's smug smile was gone. Divorce granted. I was legally free from Ryan, and he was given no claim to my assets. Restraining orders were issued, and Ryan and Linda were ordered to stay at least 500 feet away from me and my child. Linda was sentenced to 6 months behind bars for assaulting a pregnant woman. Ryan was fined and blacklisted, with heavy financial penalties for attempted fraud. He was permanently banned from my apartment complex. The judge banged the gavel, sealing their fate. I let out a slow breath. It was over. As we left the courtroom, Hannah squeezed my shoulder. You did it, Emma. I placed a hand over my belly, feeling a soft kick. We did it. The weeks after the trial felt like a breath of fresh air. For the first time in a long time, my home felt peaceful again. Ryan was gone. I no longer had to deal with his manipulation and betrayal. Linda was in jail. She could no longer control or intimidate me. My business was safe. I still owned my $18 million apartment complex, and no one could take it from me. But most importantly, I was finally free. I spent the next few months preparing for my baby's arrival, decorating the nursery and focusing on my health. One morning, at exactly 3:42 a.m., my water broke. A rush of emotions flooded me: fear, excitement, anticipation. I grabbed my hospital bag and called Hannah, who had promised to be with me when the time came. She met me at the hospital within minutes. The labor was long, exhausting, and painful. But after hours of pushing, crying, and sheer determination, I heard his first cry. The doctor gently placed him in my arms, and as I looked down at his tiny face, tears streamed down my cheeks. He was perfect. My son. My miracle. My new beginning. I kissed his forehead, whispering softly, "You're safe now, my love. No one will ever take anything from us again." Life after my son's birth was beautiful in ways I never imagined. I continued running my real estate business, now more motivated than ever. I was surrounded by love and support, with my parents and Hannah always by my side. And my son, he grew up in a home filled with warmth, laughter, and security. Looking back, I realized something powerful. I wasn't just a survivor. I was a fighter, a mother, a woman who reclaimed her life and built a future no one could take away. And as I rocked my baby in my arms, I knew we had won.